Alright fellas, our third and final video in this series is finally wrapping up. These are the videos where we essentially go over every roaming super and ability change and narrow down the exotics that you want to go for before next season. By the way, Glasswade this week is double loot. So if you're looking to take advantage of those drops and perhaps narrow down some better roles for your exotics, then this is the week for you. Now again, we've already covered Hunter and Titans. Feel free to check that out. Today though, everything is going to be about Warlocks. And believe me, for season 21, there is a ton coming to the Warlock class. First up, we're hitting Void and Nova Warp, a super that has underperformed for quite a while now and is almost never seen or used in difficult PvE content. Now this super lets you step between dimensions to subvert the laws of physics. And while in this super, you can perform a short teleport as well as a burst attack that unleashes a deadly void eruption, increasing in size and damage the longer the charge is held. Now with this attack, you can tap fire in the light attack, but charging the attack is where you start to get the hefty damage. It releases a bigger blast and covers a wider area and deal more damage overall. Now Nova Warp is seeing a 15% damage increase as well as gaining the ability to apply volatile on all fully charged attacks. This means that Nova Warp has a new advantage over the likes of Nova Bomb, as it'll be the only Void Warlock super that has direct access to a Void verb. Now while the 15% damage increase is nice, we are still skeptical whether or not this is really gonna make this class meta. However, in the blog post video last week, some of you were like, Cross, Nova Warp is my most used super in PvE, which I have a hard time believing, but sure, maybe it is. And for those folks, this change is going to be a welcome one. I think the say-all end-all for me is when we actually do our super damage breakdown and start ranking these supers pre and post season, just to see where everything sits, especially when we start to count volatile damage. Being able to apply that within the super itself, we start stacking on certain fragments. You're going to be able to roll into a group of ants and literally cause void explosions from volatile, and then extra explosions with echo of explosion. Dude, if we ever end up getting like an energy accelerant artifact mod at any point in the future, this is gonna be even nastier. Now Nova Bomb on the other hand, while not a roaming super, is also getting a buff. A solid 20% damage increase in PvE. And this is for both the Nova Bomb variants, both Vortex and Cataclysm. Now the Vortex Nova Bomb has you hurl this explosive bolt of void light at a target, disintegrating those trapped inside. And the Cataclysm variant instead travels slowly and seeks targets and detonates its shatter into smaller secret projectiles. And to this day, I'm still asking why we don't have Shatter as another Nova Bomb option, right? I'm just saying, D1 Nova Bomb had so much girth. Now the 20% buff here is really nice, guys. It's a one and done super. I'm gonna leave you with the question. Which one of the Nova Bomb supers, Vortex or Cataclysm, does more damage to a single target? Will we bet eggplants alive when super testing? That'll be this week over at twitch.tv/Aztecross. Join us today. Now with all that being said, what exotic's gonna benefit all these void changes? Well, obviously Nezarec Sin. This exotic helmet comes with the perk Abyssal Extractors, where void damage kills increase ability energy recharge rates. Essentially, when you get a void kill, and this can be with anything, weapons, abilities, etc., you will be granted the Abyssal Extractors buff for 2.5 seconds. And this maxes out at 20 seconds. And this buff gives you a whopping 300% additional base grenade and melee regeneration, as well as a 200% additional base class and super regeneration. It's nuts. So nuts, in fact, that Nezarec forgot to wear it in our boss fight with them. Now the gameplay loop for using this exotic is use void, profit. Simple, it's good, and it works for all three void supers. And considering we're getting that super buff to both our Nova Bombs and Nova Warp, this just means you're gonna get your Nova supers even faster. And then on top of that, you can take advantage of things like Ash's assets, or even hands-on, and take advantage of the neutral game to even get your super even faster, and in the process, proccing Abyssal Extractors. It's beautiful synergy. Now for Nova Bomb, you do have another option. Skull of Ahamkara. Now this actually buffs Nova Bomb specifically. With the perk Actual Grandeur, it provides additional damage resistance during Nova Bomb. And Nova Bomb and its kills grant super energy. So think like Shards of Galanor, Ursa Furiosa, Phoenix Protocol. If you manage to kill enough enemies with your Nova Bomb, you're able to get 50% of your super right back with this exotic. Sounds really good, but you have to get enough kills. And on top of that, as much as I do like the buffs here that's hitting these supers, Nezarec benefits our abilities just as much as it benefits our supers. So in my opinion, guys, to me, it's just a better option, whether you're using Nova Bomb or Nova Warp. Now, the really big buffs start coming in when we take a look at Stormcaller. Both Stormtrance and Chaos Reach are getting plenty of changes. Stormtrance has you chaining lightning from your hands to electrified targets with devastating streams of arc light that intensify over time. Now, casting Stormtrance creates a shockwave underneath you. You also have a teleport ability similar to that of Nova Warp. Now, Tickle Fingers has felt pretty weak, hence why we call call it Tickle Fingers, which is why Bungie is giving it a whopping 25% damage increase in PvE. Not only that, but the damage ramp up while attacking will now occur more quickly, over 3 seconds down from 5. When we actually do our damage testing pre and post, I think we're going to see some significant increases here in Stormtrance's overall damage. On top of that, the landfall detonation, which is the big explosion underneath you that happens when you first cast a super, that detonation and its seekers will now jolt targets. So literally, you're leading off with jolts, which you're going to be able to carry throughout your damage of this super. So you have a flat damage buff, a time reduction to reach max damage, and it's getting access to our arc verb here. And considering things like jolt can stun overload champions, you can literally run into a group of overload champs, cast Stormtrance, stun all the champions, and then just tickle them down. It sounds amazing. Now let's take a look at some of the exotics though that are going to synergize here that you want to think about going into next season. If you frequently use Arc on Warlock already, you probably don't have to dust this helmet off. Crown of Tempest has always been one of, if not the best picks for Arc Warlocks. The perk Induction Tines says that Arc ability or Jolt Final Blows increases the recharge rate of your Arc abilities and extends the duration of Stormtrance. So when you get an Arc ability or Jolt Final Blow, you'll get a stack of Conduction Tines. Now one stack gives you 175% grenade melee and super regeneration rates and 22% slower Stormtrance super drain. 2 stacks gives you 350% grenade melee and super regeneration and 44% slower Stormtrance super drain. And 3 stacks gives you 525% grenade melee and super regeneration rates and 66% slower Stormtrance super drain. Fellas, just having 3 stacks, which is so free here, allows you to last 66% longer. Can you imagine? On top of that, you could be using your other abilities throughout this process. Now, this next exotic, you will be having to dust off because I know you probably forgot about it. Stormdancer's Brace. This has the perk Ascending Amplitude, where each target you defeat with Stormtrance increases the damage you deal and refunds super energy when Stormtrance ends. Now, you can see where this gets interesting because the super already is getting a 25% damage increase. So just how high can the damage really go when you've got this exotic ramping up in super damage as you defeat targets with it? Now, every time you score a kill with Stormtrance with this chest piece on, you'll get a stack of Ascending Amplitude. Now, these stacks last for 8 seconds and gives a 10% increase in damage, maxing out at 10 stacks and 100% increase in damage. You can also get up to 50% super refunded if you defeat enough enemies with it. So the idea here would be to pop Stormtrance right in the middle of a group of ants. That way you instantly get a bunch of those stacks, hitting that max at times 10, and as you get more kills, you'll keep refreshing the duration of those stacks, giving you the highest damage output possible, hopefully resulting in a good amount of refunded super energy once it ends. Now, as good as all of this sounds on paper, keep in mind, when comparing it to Crown of Tempest, you really start to feel not having that slower super drain. I'm just saying, guys, the super feels like it's gone really quick without Crown equipped. I know it's got all these other buffs, and if you get enough kills, you get 50% of your super right back, so there's trade-offs. And when we do our side-by-side damage test, we're gonna actually see how this all shakes out. Now let's take a look at what Chaos Reach will be putting out next season. It's been a long time since we've had a Chaos Reach meta, but Chaos Reach unleashes a long-range channel beam of concentrated arc energy that you can deactivate to save super energy on. Now this is getting a 25% damage increase in PvE, and sustained damage on a single target will now create a jolting lightning strike at the target's location. So essentially jolt for this as well, guys. They're also increasing damage resistance versus players from 40% to now 50%, and increase maximum strafe speed from 3.5 meters per second to 4.5 meters per second. Granted, I don't know if that's really going to make that big of a difference, but the extra damage resist is nice. Bungie also made some changes to where the super camera would be easier to target with, yada yada. The main focus here is the 25% increase in damage and the jolt. That is what's going to make this super nasty. The question is, how much sustained damage will be necessary to cause jolts? Because the sooner we proc jolts, the better. On top of that, keep in mind the wording here that they use. Jolting lightning strike. It almost sounds like something out of like Thunderlord or Cloud Strike, which makes us think that this may be something completely separate. That not only are we seeing jolt, but we may see like impact damage of a lightning strike. So lots of questions here that we need to answer. How often will jolt be able to be procced? How often will we get lightning strikes? Is it one and done? And of course, what exotics will benefit the most here? Now keep in mind, guys, having jolt means you're going to be able to stun overload champions, literally blowing your load here here with Chaos Reach, we'll be able to achieve that. Hopefully early on in the super though, as we would want to get that stun off quickly so we can hit maximum damage. Now when it comes to buffing Chaos Reach, we really only have one good exotic. And I know someone's gonna say, Cross, Crown's good here. Listen, truly, Geomag Stabilizers is the one and only Chaos Reach exotic. This comes with the perk Close Enough, where damaging targets with Chaos Reach extends its duration. Now Chaos Reach will refund 10% super energy on hits with a 0.75 second cooldown between refunds. Now this can increase super duration by up to 100%. That's nice. Double duration, guys. Especially when we factor in the fact that we're gonna be doing 25% more damage and have that jolting ability. If we happen to get that lightning strike and say it's hitting 2 or 3 times per super, well hell fellas, with Geomags, we're doubling that. Chaos Reach and Geomags could definitely be back on the menu next season. Now as for the Warlock Stasis super, Winter's Wrath. This is getting a small 10% damage buff in PvE. Nothing too crazy here. Winter's Wrath gives you and your Warlock a stasis stab that lets you cast out a barrage of stasis shards that freezes targets, with an alternate ability to cast out a shockwave that shatters all frozen targets. So the whole gameplay loop here with this super is just to use your barrage to freeze a single enemy or group of enemies and then use the shockwave to shatter them. Now there's really nothing here in the exotic department that buffs and synergizes Winter's Wrath. Well, that is until Lightfall. Ballidorse Wrathweavers comes with the perk Hearts of Ice, where your Winter's Wrath shockwave deals increased shatter damage, and this is a 100% increase in damage. Also, allies in range of your shockwave gain an overshield, as well as increased damage with stasis weapons. Personally, we did damage tests not that long ago, comparing super damage. Ballidorse impressed me. No, it wasn't at the top of the leaderboards, but still, did more than I ever expected it to do. And then on top of that, it plays support for your teammates, although only buffing stasis weapons is very specific. With that being said though, I'm curious to see how this plays out next season. The 10% buff will be a welcome one. Now moving on to Solar. The only thing that's really changing with Daybreak is that they're adjusting the super camera to allow you to look down further, allowing you to avoid VFX blocking. That's it guys. I know. Dawn Chorus, Bottom Tree Dawn Blade. Will we ever get it back? Only time will tell. Now for ability changes. Let's start off with the Strand Melee Arcane Needle. This melee is a needle that will embed in your targets and unravel them. You can activate this ability again to chain up to 2 additional melee attacks. An unraveling target is permeated with destructive strand matter, and upon taking additional damage, they create unraveling projectiles that seek out nearby targets and deal damage. Now, similar to like the Titan Strand Melee, Arcane Needle is seeing a decrease in cooldown based on how many melee charges the player has stored. At 0 charges, cooldown is reduced by 15%. At 2 charges, cooldown is reduced by 30%. It will also be seeing its initial velocity increase to 40 meters per second, up from 30, and its final velocity increase from 70 meters per second, up from 60. It's also getting its projectile strength increase by 10%. Now, the obvious one here for us, guys, is Felwinter's helmet. No lie, Felwinter's is so good. I love it when I have someone on my team rocking this exotic. We made a build for Grandmasters utilizing Void, but it'll still be fantastic here on Strand and even better next season. The perk Warlord's In makes your power melee final blows create a burst of energy that weakens nearby targets. And finisher and final blows against more powerful targets increases the radius of the burst and length of the weakening effect. Now this weakening effect is a 30% debuff with a minimum duration of 5 seconds. Now keep in mind this completely changes depending on the enemy that you melee. So at the low end, it's 5 seconds for like minor enemies. And then it goes up to 10 with elites. Mini bosses is 15. And simultaneously, the radius increases. It starts off at 10 meters, then to 15 meters, then to 20 meters. Now the easiest way to get the most out of this exotic is just to go for finishers. But considering we have 3 melees here on Strand and they're getting buffs there in its regeneration, tracking strength, velocity, we're gonna have a lot more opportunities here to land that melee kill. And with each melee kill, we're dropping that 30% debuff and in the least getting targets weak enough to then finish, which we can apply that 30% debuff and an even larger duration. Now another exotic that has obvious synergy is of course Winter's Guile. Warlord Sigil makes your melee kills increase your melee damage. And at 5 stacks, this damage increases 275%. But again, similar to Wormguide Caress, the damage window is just too low. 5 seconds is not enough, guys. I need longer than 5 seconds. Maybe 7 seconds. Like, I feel like I can get away with 7 seconds, preferably 10 seconds. Dude, if you can last for 10 seconds with both Wormguide Caress and Winter's Guile, meta! 275% is nice. We just need it to last longer. Now we also have Karnstein Armlets with the perk Vampire's Caress. Let me just say, guys, these gauntlets have kept me alive so many times. Melee kills, though, instantly restore a large amount of health and then continue to restore health afterward for a short duration. So good. If you happen to be solo in any content in the game, dude, take advantage of Karnsteins. It's a great option for survivability, and then on top of that, having 3 melee charges to proc it is really nice here. Now, Claws of Ahamkara is actually going to be very interesting next season, introducing a first of its kind in Destiny franchise, the ability to have 4 charges of really anything, and in this case, your melee. Bungie announced that Claws of Ahamkara is currently bugged, but will work with Strand, and the fix for that bug will come next season, giving you an additional melee charge. So in this case, we're going to have 4 Arcane Needles with all the increases there in regeneration, tracking, velocity, all that good stuff. But to be quite honest with you guys, I think the exotic I'm going to be using next season is the same one I'm using right now with Arcane Needle, and that's Necrotic Grips. Grasp of Devourer makes it so that damaging commands with a melee poisons them. Not a kill, just damaging. It also deals increased damage over time, and defeating a poison command spreads the condition. This is beautiful synergy, especially if you break out Osseous Trigger, guys. You break out Osseous Trigger, you proc Weavers, you've got Necrotic Grips on, amazing things are going to occur on your screen. This synergy here is practically orgasmic, and I say this as a Titan main. You're already going to be unraveling enemies with this melee, creating Seekers that swarm targets for more damage, and then on top of that, you have that poison damage as well, and we're not even getting into the synergy of Osseous Trigger. Just the melees alone, you'll be able to lead into every single encounter with this melee, giving you the ability to plague an entire battlefield. So a ton of options here for Strand Warlocks. But again, Necrotic Grips, that one to me, man, just looks the juiciest. Now moving on to the stasis changes. This isn't necessarily an ability change, but we're gonna mention it here anyways. The Frostpulse aspect is getting a small buff where it now provides 2 meters of additional melee lunge after activation for 1.2 seconds. Now Frostpulse makes it so that your rift generates a shockwave that freezes nearby combatants. What this means is that on those occasions where you do get frozen because a Warlock baited you into an alley and they pop their rift and you get frozen, they're gonna immediately just apply a melee and shatter palm your ass. Now for solar, Incinerator Snap is getting a fix to an issue that prevented the secondary projectile arming shape from activating. Because of this added consistency, the total damage versus players has been reduced from 150 to 135 to compensate. Now this is an interesting one because the fact that Bungie toned this back tells me the overall consistency is about to be substantially improved inside of PvE. And again, guys, this melee is where you create a fan of burning sparks that explode and then scorches enemies. And it's extremely important that that scorch applies and that you actually land these, as that's how you're gonna get to your ignitions. We've made a lot of different builds with this melee. I love it. It's Colonel Mustang in the flesh. But the inconsistencies here have been annoying. With that being said, though, all the melee related exotics that we just mentioned here, Karnsteins, Claws, Felwinters, hell, even Necrotic Grips, all of those things are gonna be beautiful here with this change to Celestial. Now, Ball Lightning is getting a big buff by 30%. The melee fires an arc projectile that releases this perpendicular lightning strike after a short time. And while amplified, the Ball Lightning releases additional lightning strikes before detonating. Now, let me just say, I have never gone out of my way to really utilize this melee until now. It's also seen a reduction in the ping scalar on both primary and secondary detonations, so that combatants are less likely to be knocked out of the secondary strike. And this would occur while the player is amplified. Again, all the melee exotics that we just mentioned a second ago are going to work beautifully here. But you can, of course, take advantage of even things like Crown of Tempest for that ability regeneration. I'm actually curious to see how much damage this is going to be putting out. Like, we may be in a situation where it can clear an entire room full of ads. And then on top of that, the arc synergy overall. There's so much you can do here. Now, to round down our Warlock ability changes, we need to talk about Chaos Accelerant and those charge grenades. Chaos Accelerant is the void aspect that provides additional buffs to a few void grenades. Now, the Chaos Accelerant version of scatter grenades are getting increased tracking consistency of charged scatter grenade submunitions, as well as increased submunition arming duration. They're also fixing a bug where some submunitions were impacting the ground on creation in some situations, resulting in early detonation. Dude, that happened all the time to me, right? Throw my grenade out there, wait for the bounce, doesn't happen. Instead, blows its load into the ground. What a waste. Now, this overall should greatly improve improve the consistency of these grenades and lower the amount of accidental detonations caused from just hitting the ground. Now keep in mind, Bungie's already tried buffing these grenades once. We're gonna have to see if it's gonna work this time. It's a strange animal. What's gonna be even stranger is if next season I'm like, yo, overcharged scatter grenades is the meta. Who would have thought? Now there's a ton of synergy here that you can go with, guys. You've got Verity's Brow. Its perk Fourth Magic states that weapon final blows with the damage type matching your subclass energy grants death throws, which provides grenade damage bonus and grants you grenade energy. Now when you have death throws and you throw a grenade, nearby allies also gain increased grenade regeneration for a short time. Now each stack of death throws grants you 50% increased grenade recharge rate and a 20% increase in grenade damage, maxing out at 100% increase in damage at 5 stacks and 250% increased recharge rates, which is a whopper. Now this helmet truly can make any damage dealing grenade good. We've done a ton of builds with it, but yeah, this should definitely pump the damage out. Now we also have Contraverse Holds, which comes with the perk Chaotic Exchanger, where you resist incoming damage while charging your void grenades. This is a 20% damage resist, and charging void grenades returns grenade energy on hit. Now this obviously pairs perfectly here, as you'll be charging your scatter grenades to take advantage of the buffs. And grenade hits proc Chaotic Exchange, granting a whopping 2,000 additional base grenade regeneration rates for a little over a second and a half, with a 4-second cooldown between activations. Now currently, this results in us getting about 40% of our scatter grenade charge back. Pretty nice. And if we're actually walking around with like mini nukes here with scatter grenades, this could be the way to go. However, one of my favorite exotics from back in Destiny 1 might actually see a rise here, and that is Nothing Manacles. These give you an extra scatter grenade charge. Very simple, very straightforward. However, it also enables tracking for your scatter grenade projectiles. And Bungie just talked about fixing the overall consistency here. The only downside to all of this is that I'm being told that Chaos Accelerant and its increased tracking does not stack with Nothing Manacles, which is unfortunate. It could have been perfect, Bungie. Either way it goes, you get an extra grenade. And if you're really trying to lean into the theme of Lightfall and of course ability regeneration, you still got Nezarec Sin. But lastly, I'm gonna mention one other exotic, and I know I keep listing all of them to the point where it's like, Cross, you've mentioned every exotic in the game. You'd be surprised. But another exotic that has carried me in so many things, both in PvP and in PvE. Eye of Another World. This strange looking exotic is mesmerizing. It literally buffs all ability regeneration by 50%. I know it does all that other stuff, highlights, priority targets, yada yada. The main benefit is the regeneration speed of your grenade, melee, and rift, which of course synergizes perfectly here with pretty much everything we went over today. So guys, be looking out for Eye of Another World. I actually used to use it all the time before Omnioculus for Stacy builds, and it was very good. And it took Omnioculus being as powerful as it is to replace Eye of Another World for me. So guys, that wraps it up. Those are our 3 videos breaking down all the upcoming changes for both our supers and our abilities next season. If you're interested in the exotics that you should be looking for, I will link those other videos down below in the description. We will also be testing things live this week, really comparing how things sit damage-wise, super to super across the board. And then once everything goes live next season, we'll see not only how much things have changed super to super, but where things stack ranked up against each other. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.